days or something.
Could use it.
Yeah, if we could use it, I could hold enough water.
Yeah.
Waiting for the free water.
Yeah.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Jim, thanks for getting coffee. We'd hate to put it out, but you take water. I thought for a second, renege on the
I
coffee.
got done having 2 cups in my last meeting,
All
so,
right, it's good, it's good.
so I'm trying to balance now.
Fair enough.
All right.
So what we'll do, we have one person online, Ben, who is with JVG, which is the financial side of the rural district, is online. So if we could just kind of go around, this is, I think, more so for Jim's benefit, to make sure we know everybody who's in the room and what capacity they're representing. So Christy, we'll start with you.
I'm Chrissy Holman. I will be your recording secretary.
I'm Linda Glesney. I'm general counsel for the rural district. I'm Andrea Smith. I'm finance manager for LFRA.
And Craig Willard, I'm the union president for Local 3566 and Lieutenant at Station 7.
Tony Stefano, Vice President of the Union, alternate for Craig, engineer here at Station 1.
Ben Shugla, City Attorney, Loveland.
I'm Paul Pfeiffer. I'm a member of the Fire and Rescue Advisory Commission, FRAC.
I'm Tom Bale. I'm also a member of FRAC.
Jackie Marsh, Loveland Mayor, and LFRA board member.
I'm Jeff Swanham. I'm the rural district and an LFRA member.
Jim Thompson, city manager, Loveland, and also on the
LFRA board.
got there.
Molly Elder, deputy chief financial officer for Loveland.
Matthew Elliott, budget manager of the city.
All right, and Ben, we can't see you, but we introduced you. Do you want to say something?
No, I think that was a great introduction, Chief. Just want to point out, sorry, I'm not with you in person, but Jim may know a place where I'm at. I'm in Scottsdale right now. So nice seeing everybody.
Fair enough. Thank you. All right, so thanks everybody for coming. Let me just kind of set the stage and again express my appreciation for everybody being here. Kind of rewinding the clock a little bit to 2024. Literally April of 2024 is when we launched this conversation initially. We've gone down quite the path and we've kind of re-geared this a couple of times. So what I would like to do is just kind of really reset the deck. We got a new city manager here. We got the same group, but we were kind of waiting for an extended period for Jim to get here. So Jim, I will say this, and I'm not going to continuously point you out, but there's some history here that I think you need to get spun up on, and then we'll lead into the conversation. And quite frankly, I'm not sure where we go at the end of these slides. So I got like 15 slides. I'll go very fast, rewind, whatever we got to do to kind of keep everybody on track. Okay. At the end of this, I'm just going to put forth 3 ideas. Okay. None of this is in stone. And what I would ask of this group, okay, and please nobody take this the wrong way. This is a conversation. There isn't a plan coming from today's conversation. It is literally just a conversation to see what kind of direction we want to go as we kind of break out into a financial group and a legal group. And the way we configured this the previous time was we had the financial group. We had to figure out financially how we were going to do this. Nothing was solidified, okay? Once it is identified financially that we can do this, then we go over to the legal side and say, can we legally do this? Now, the person that's not represented in the room today is Emily Powell. Between Emily and Linda, these folks do it every day. And what I would ask you to take into consideration, okay, we're not city against rural. We're literally a team working together here. And I want to say this, and I want to go on record in front of our finance folks, city attorney, the mayor, the chairman, and the city manager. I will not, as the fire chief, will not support anything at the demise of the city. So we are not building a kingdom. We are a team, and what we build has to sustain the city and has to sustain fire and emergency services in our community. I think we all can agree on that, okay? So there is no covert, hey, grab this when 2027 comes around. I have no interest in that. I want to be as transparent as we possibly can and get to the finish line together, whatever that model looks like. And I don't, quite frankly, know what that model looks like. Is that fair? All right, thanks for your participation. I appreciate that. It's gonna go well. It's like I'm doing. I do that every time. So let me start with.
Chief, if I
Yes.
may, I know you had your slides and I look forward to those, and then your 3 ideas at the end. I may have additional ideas to add at the end as well, having gone down this path and on both sides of it, with the city taking over a district and then contracting with districts to provide service to the districts. So I mean, all the different models that you can imagine over time. I also then went through all the IGAs and the amendments to all the IGAs since the beginning.
Yep.
And just seeing each phase that occurred. I have them all here too. So after we spoke shortly, just for that half hour, that one evening at the end of the day, that I caught up to you. So I appreciate the time on that. But I'll look forward to some of the history, and because that's some of the missing pieces. And I did watch the entirety of the 813 presentation to council and so forth, and we talked about that previously as well. So I got some of the bits and pieces just.
Yeah, and I don't want to rehash things unnecessarily, but there are some things, and honestly, I think from Matt and Molly's perspective, and certainly Brian's, I know he's on vacation, but this is stuff that we put together a timeline that I don't think we, LFRA to city finance, have had this conversation. So I put this together and I'll make my way through it. But Matt, certainly from your perspective, I'd ask you to throw darts at it. Let me know if we've missed something. But I think it starts to tell the story of how we got where we are. I'm not talking about the unification group. I'm talking about LFRA and our expenses and so forth. So there's been some moments where we've tripped over the course of time. So we'll share that with you. But let me start with this, and I think this, and maybe I missed the mark on the goal, but I think to establish a sustainable financial and organizational framework that ensures the long-term success of fire, rescue, and EMS services for our community. That's kind of the goal. I don't know what that looks like, so it's a clean slate. Even though we've gone down the path 6 months or so, let's just start over, okay? There's a whiteboard in the back. Let's start with that type of framework. So the key factors that I want to emphasize is to maintain or improve the current services. I think that's what we have to do. This is the bar. We definitely don't want to drop below that and put people at risk. So I think we can agree there. Financial resiliency for both the LFRA and our contributors. So that's everybody. That's the city of Loveland, that's the rural district and everybody we serve, and the LFRA. Financial parity would be an absolute goal. Okay, I can't say we can get there. And when I speak of that, I know the chairman has concerns from a rural perspective. When we start talking about sales tax, and this came up in our previous conversation, a sales tax on the rural side is a dual tax. So they're going to pay property tax, and then they're going to have to pay sales tax. Inevitably, I'm just putting it out there, it's going to come up as a conversation piece. Okay, and it's a challenge that we need to find a way to work through. Organizational functionality. Now, I put that up there because the authority model is complex, okay? Every meeting for me is 3. Now, I know I'm not getting any sympathy from you. I understand that. But here's the reality is it's a complex governance model. I'm not saying it's not functional. We've done it since 2012. Not saying we can't do it moving forward. We can even create additional bolt-on opportunities to this. But let's look at the functionality as an element of concern as well, or an element to build into this. Initial options for discussion, okay? And these are initial options. I know Brian had, or Vince and Brian had some open to that, okay? The transition from an authority to a fire protection district, okay? That's out there. It's an idea. Let's see where it goes. Retain the fire authority model with a revised financial formula. Brian and I have had that conversation. And I know there's a lot of emphasis on the PFA model. Rest assured, I know the PFA model, okay? I've studied the PFA model and the revised PFA model. I'm happy to have that conversation. I just want to throw out the key factors to take into consideration with a revised financial formula. Okay, and I'm not just solely focused on the PFA model. This is one that has not been brought up, but I do want to bring it up today. The chairman and I talked about this a little bit. Expanded fire authority model, okay? What you will hear me say is for an extended period of time, we have looked at these 2 pots of money, okay? The city and the rural. We've looked at these 2 pots of money. The rural is X. The city is not growing. And our request is we need more money. Well, how do we get this to grow? Well, I don't know. When we have a tax base like we do, we haven't passed a tax since 1984. It's very tough to make this grow. So that's where this model as a form of conversation came into play. Just an expanded authority model with additional financial contributors to the model. I'll give you a little bit more on that at the end here. So here's some challenges. City of Loveland, and hopefully nobody takes offense to this, okay? Mayor, I'll just share this with you. I would share it with Mayor Pro Tem Mallow as well. We're a tax adverse community. I don't think anybody's going to argue against that point. Last sales tax, 1984. I know I'm reiterating Molly stuff you guys have talked about for a year plus. 2023, the voters approved a measure to exempt food. Okay, it has played a role. In 2023, the voters also turned down a proposed 0.37% fire safety sales tax. But I emphasize this point here. By 913 votes, that's 3.2%. It's the closest we've ever been since 1984 to moving a tax forward.
And I will add into that, Chief, that number, I would guess that the majority of that are people that live in Metro District. And that's what Thompson School District found in 2016. When their bond measure failed, they actually did a survey calling people, and the people that live in Metro Districts were the no.
I'll take your word for it. I can't validate one way or the other.
Add that into the equation for tax adverse.
Sure. 2024 turned down the proposal to raise the sales tax, basically that recovery from 3 to 4. And then when we look at public trust, and this is where it's going to sting, but I don't think anybody can argue in opposition. City Council has an approval or a trust rating of 36%. That's right there with the federal government. I'm not sure you want to go too far with that. Okay, not my. Letting that simmer. So with that, let's go to the opportunities. LFRA approval rating, 96%. And that is the LFRA's community survey that we did. That's a 96% approval rating. Now, let me let this one simmer a little bit. A 99% trust rating. I'm not bragging, but I am bragging. That's an important element for us to put into the consideration. This needs to be part of our conversation. If we're going to succeed, if we're going to go to the voters, these are two cards to be played. At the same time, here's the third card that I think needs to be played. Colorado is at an extremely high risk. I've had 4 town halls, and we've all been concerned about our fire history. And quite frankly, these 3 fires, while devastating, the remaining fuel is right up the alley to the city of Loveland. So basically our entire district, with the exception of the Alexander Mountain Fire and the outskirts of East Cameron Peak, the rest of the fuel remaining is in our district. So there's still a high probability of a devastating event in our community. I've been talking for months now about insurance with our rural district. All the folks around, we got people in no man's land. Literally, they can't get insurance. So we're working on trying to create affordability and access to insurance through mitigation and preventative work. So these are cards of opportunity that I think we need to look at as we develop whatever plan moving forward. So how did we get here? Okay, I'm going to roll back the clock. Bear in mind, I came here in 2021, the latter months of 2021. In 2008, we were basically a municipal fire department working out of 5 engines with 2-person staffing and a battalion chief. So you basically had 10 people on apparatus and a battalion chief covering the city of Loveland. In 2009, there were budget reductions. This is when the recession hit, okay? We had 3 fire inspectors that transitioned to firefighter positions, and they served in a fit capacity. So basically, they were doing inspections off the apparatus. So playing a dual role, wearing 2 hats. We added a business manager at the time, and this was under, am I correct, Chief Morawski was the fire chief at this time? In 2010, we closed the airport station. So initially, the fire station at the airport was staffed. Okay, it was staffed with personnel. Those personnel were moved to Station 6. So we shut down that operation at the airport, moved those personnel, and created Tower 46, and that's the station out at McWhinney Boulevard. In 2012, that's when we formed the LFRA. So basically the two entities, the city of Loveland and Loveland Rural Fire Protection District came together. And that's when the 8218 financial model was created. Now, I want to say this 8218 financial model has been a contentious conversation on both sides. This was based on call volume, okay? And from the inception, Chief Morawski put it in our strategic plan, this formula needs to be revisited, okay? So we heard that time and time again.
Chief, can I add one thing there in
Sure.
that formula? It wasn't totally on call volume, because our call volume at that time was about 22%. But based on what we were being fed at that time in terms of future statistics and everything, we could see that that was going to change and come down.
Okay.
And the call volume since then has gone from about 22 to 14.
And I'll talk more about call volume. This is a difficult conversation. But as the fire chief, I think I can add some elements, with the exception of the other two gentlemen in the room, that most people are not aware of. This is a difficult point of measurement. There's no question about it. And this is really what creates the greatest degree of frustration at this point. 2013, so we're 1 year transitioning into the LFRA. We had 6 firefighters. This is transitioning from 2-person staffing to 3-person staffing. Now, bear in mind, the minimum standard for the national standard is 4. I am not standing before you. Jim and I had this conversation. I'm not standing here asking for 4. I think we'll break the city. We do a risk assessment in conjunction with our accreditation process to evaluate our needs. We're comfortable with 3. Now, I know Craig and Anthony would love to get 4. Okay, and they come to me and ask for that. But we have said we'll do a risk assessment. When it says we need 4, we will transition or come to you collectively as a group and say, hey, we need to find a way to get to 4 people. I'd love to be this. Okay, but again, I think we're doing good at 3. But in 2013, we were making that transition. And Matt, I'm going to emphasize you a couple of times, don't take it the wrong way, is because this is my frustration with some of the presentations that have been put forth. Now, I understand what you guys are doing. We had a spike, a huge spike. Basically, we're the Rocky Mountains, right? You see us. But this is where these spikes come in, is we are taking a volunteer organization and a part-time organization in 2013 and beginning to transition to a career department. So there is going to be the Rocky Mountains being built out. And every one of our stations obviously contributes to that, okay? So this is transitioning, that's adding 6 firefighters, okay? Added 3 rovers. Now, when we talk about rovers, we have talked about this terminology probably being inappropriate. What that is basically, that is to allow coverage for sick time. That is to allow basically people to take their time off that they've earned. So when you see that, that's what we're doing. And anytime you see a 3, just remember that's 1 person. Okay, it's 1 per shift because everything is made up with 3 shifts, with the exception of staff positions such as a lieutenant and a plans reviewer. So that happened in 2013. Everybody following me there?
Real quick, Chief.
Yeah.
So are we only talking about sworn here?
No. Business manager.
So in 2008, we had the 5 engines, 2-person staffing, 10 plus the.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Overall staffing. This was.
Additions.
That's a great point. This is just the operations. You're going to see where we start adding, you'll start seeing the numbers.
Okay, because I was looking at 2013, we're sitting at 73 FTE total.
Yeah, this is not going to reflect that. I'm sorry. This is misleading you. Okay, so this is what you've got operationally, then you've got some degree of support staff. Okay, fair point. Does everybody understand that? So to your point, anytime we see the financial figure behind it, we're starting to basically add to the budget. Okay, and most of it throughout here is going to be ongoing expenses. This is personnel. Fire Station 2 in 2014 added a rescue. Okay, so this is the first identity of any added risk model. So you start adding the rescue, so that starts taking into canyon responses as far as technical rescue, swift water rescue, and so forth. Added 9 firefighters. So that's basically putting 3 firefighters per shift on this unit. There's a problem, okay? And this is why I highlight it. We're already at a 3-person deficit. When you add 9 people, that's 3 people per shift, okay? That means nobody can take off any of those 3 days. So by rights, we should have had some sort of flexibility by putting, I'll call it a rover. Jim, I know you don't like that name, and that's fair, but I need some sort of flexibility in the system. So you're either hiring at 1.3 or 1.25, somewhere in there. Every time you hire one, there should be a fraction behind it to give some sort of relief. Added a training position, half year, training equipment and props in 2014. In 2015, full year for the Station 2 crew and the training position salaries were added to the budget. So added a training engineer at 160, obviously that's a full year with benefits. Added an administrative analyst, full year with benefits. In 2016, these were all staffing adjustments, so staff cost increases, 110K. Added the ARF engineer, so now we're going back to the airport and we're going to staff it with 1 engineer. So again, no form of relief. We're putting somebody out there, and to be clear, this is not. We don't have airplanes coming in, back to back. So this is on an as needed. She's out there, but she's staffing that station to allow the aircraft to come in. Equipment and services at 170, and then wage adjustments 120. And I know going back to the Raftilla study between Matt and Brian, there were questions because these wage adjustments, we had a lot of them in there. And the argument, I won't say argument, the conversation was from the perspective the city bases it on 4%, and ours was based on 6%. And I think if you look at the industry, our industry is an industry that's driving those figures forward. We're not just grabbing those out of thin air. We're literally doing staffing studies and salary studies. You're laughing, Jim.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it alone.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I think it's important.
Well, and realizing that, and we could talk more about that, but just like ranges, depth of range, overlaps, all of that, you are different. And most times public safety tends to be, you have that definitive system. You don't want the overlap. Because when you have overlap, then when you bump somebody, then you get into trouble, or when you hire somebody new, so you got to eliminate that. The depth of your range is how long to start to where you max out, and then promotional opportunities. And then if they bump, do you do it day 1 that they bump? Do you do a day after 20 days of service in that position? There's a million models out there. Your time element, what hour shifts? Some have 12, some have 24. 24 is still the common out there, right? And so are you 2 on and 3 off, or or do you spread, right? So all of those different things go into that. I get that. I get the wage adjustments. Benefits are different than the rest of the civilian side, right? They tend to be different on public safety side, both police and fire. So we can get in the depths of all that. I have it because it's an authority and I'm leaving it alone. I have asked questions about, the ranges and the depths of the range and some other stuff. They're a little bit odd in that environment, but it tends to be different. Understand that. Understand you got to take care of your people, otherwise you lose your people, right? So we all know that. And so I'm not against any of those, but we have to remember one thing that's important for me, which you probably heard in staff meeting. When I look to authorize a hiring and take it to council and get approval in the budget and so forth, I don't look at it as a year or 2. I look at it as a lifetime commitment. I need to make sure that I'm financially competent enough in the competence of our financial statement that we're going to retain that. The worst you can do is hire somebody and 2 years later start laying people off again. Yeah. And sure, sales tax is more cyclical, and when we get talking about the finance, we'll get to that. So you got to be careful that you staff more towards the valley than the peak, and then contract out for different services that you can. But that's where I'm going to be a little particular when we get into those budget discussions and what you guys are asking for, so I can fully understand what you're doing. And knowing that, I know your pension with the 10% and police 10%, and the other employees are 4%, and all the other good stuff. I get that, so I don't have a problem with that. But I do chuckle a little bit sometimes because you can have the ratcheting effect too, especially in a strong unionized environment, right? Maybe some of the states I've been in where you're always chasing after each other. When one jumps, then everybody else the next year, and then the next year, and the next year. So it kind of builds, and then that's where you have the hiccup that the elected bodies and the community push back, and then even you go from 99% approval down to 89, right? Fire never goes slow, right? Everybody loves fire, so.
No, everybody loves a fire department that does the right thing. So let me take that, and I'll say, Jim, I hear all that, but what I don't want to do is oversaturate, okay? What I'm talking about is 4% and 6%. 4% is the general raise comparison that the city figures. In our situation, we were figuring 6. I get your point, the compression and everything else. That's not what.
Well, and even that, Chief, I don't even want to spend time on that. The authority it operates with, and of itself. And so I don't even want to get in the depths of that because we can sit here and debate it for a while. I'm not going to do that in this room. I think where do we want to go as a model and talk about the history and the outs? Because we went from 13 million in 2013 to 20 million today on the city side. So you had a, pretty good jump, and that's more of the discussion. Where do we need to grow to start having the coverage, to have the rovers, to do? I mean, what does that model look like?
Yeah.
How best to get there? And there's a couple others I'll add to your list of 3 later when we get there, but appreciate that. If we go into the depths of that, we can sit here.
I know.
And for everybody else.
So let me keep it at 31,000 feet. I'll do that. So moving forward, 2017, again, added 2 rovers per shift. This is catch-up staffing. And you're going to hear me say that because, again, when we hire 9 for a 3-person company, we're shocked. We don't have the relief within the system. Now, this is something, and Matt, you may have known this, but I do want to call this out. In 2017, this actually caught me by surprise. I didn't realize that we were still operating with part-time staff in 2017. So when I go back to the budget slides, there's a spike. So you look at this and you say, well, you just converted it. Okay, there's really nothing. You got 6 full-time out of 12 part-time, but the benefits. So now we absorb 390,000 in benefits. Sworn retirement plan was also added in there as a match. 2018 contributed 130 to public works. This was a one-time, obviously. This is the continual remediation work or construction work necessary to retain or restore the training center, the burn building. 2019 added a fire inspector. So remember, we took the fire inspectors, we converted them to firefighters working off of the fire trucks doing inspections. Now we're trying to build back. CSD added the fire inspector at 75. In 2020, opened Fire Station 7. So this is the one out behind Big Thompson Elementary, the rural funded station, added 9 firefighters. That's 3 per shift, 1.3 million, and then added 3 rovers. So in this case, we created relief from the start, and then there were wage adjustments in that same year. 2021, there was a step adjustment. So this was Chief Miller made this adjustment before his retirement. I came in, this budget was already set. 2022, this was already in the works. If you go back to October of 21, I came in October 4th, October 7th, 3 days after I got here, we broke ground on Station 10. I think that's a pretty progressive fire chief, I can't say myself. So you break ground on Station 10. Obviously, that was all planned out before I got here. When we opened Station 10, 1 year later, we moved Engine 46, which is a 3-person unit, to Station 10. So that's the primary unit that runs out of there as Engine 50. We added a squad to Station 6. That is a 2-person unit. Notice what we hired: 6 firefighters to cover 3 shifts. Again, a 3-person deficit or thereabouts. No relief time for time earned. And then there were wage adjustments within that year of 830K or 813K, excuse me. Roll the clock forward. We go back. I'm now here. Okay. The conversation is we got to reevaluate this financial model. Okay. There's many conversations. We basically went out, got a 3rd-party group, the Ralph Tillis. This was a city-based recommendation at the time. So that 3rd party came in with 3 objectives and 3 requests. Can you review the financial model, the 8218? Can you also evaluate the mill levy within the rural district? And at the same time, the legitimacy of a fire safety tax for the city. So that was their charge. They came back to us with a revised financial formula of 80-20. So now the contribution is 80% from the city, 20% contribution from the rural. Okay, that made a difference of approximately 500K per year. Rural contribution greater than it was the previous year.
Chief, didn't correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Raftell's report come back with, was it 8119, and then the city changed it to 8020?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
There was an administrative, so basically it did run volume, total assessed value, and then an administrative charge in there of 10%. And that's what created, because when you did look at the figures, it actually came out 75-25. The administrative, because obviously it's much more heavy in the city, that's what created the 80-20.
So then when did the 8119, was that the LFRA board? Is that what they recommended?
Do you recall on that,
Jeff?
I don't remember anybody recommending 8119.
Okay.
I mean, it could have happened, I just don't remember it. Yeah, from a rural perspective, we felt like we were pushed into the 80-20. We didn't feel like that was a fair number, and we didn't give a lot of credit to the Raftellus report for a number of reasons, which I'm willing to share if anybody wants to hear.
Good. I mean, we can definitely go back.
Totally agree with the report either.
So back on track, I knew it. I'm supposed to do the history. Pursue the district, the fire district tax increase. So this is obviously in the rural side. So basically they advocated the 2.41 mils. The voters passed that. That now sits at 11.1 mils, and that's the collection. Pursue the fire safety sales tax was also supported by them at 0.37. Voters rejected that by 931 votes. So we formed the Fire District Unification Steering Committee in 2024. So that was April of 2024. So I share all that. That's the history lesson. So what we did is, obviously, this is the Raftellus report. We used a third party to base our decisions to develop a strategic plan coupled with the wildland community wildfire protection plan. So basically, this is the scientific base, this is the third party validation, and this is the plan to bring those two together to formulate an organization moving forward. So a couple more and I'll wrap it up. Obviously, we know this 80-20 is where we stand today. Then we have the impact fees on top of that, 26.7 million. I'm using 2024 figures. We look at this like any organization, salary and benefits, about 75%. Operating funds for our creativity on the back end to provide supplies, purchase services, and capital equipment. We've got about 25% of that to work off of. So I share this. This is not a new slide, but it's important. And Jim, I know you can relate to this. I will say there is some encouraging news. Senator Hawley out of Missouri is actually questioning the creation of a monopoly by the apparatus manufacturers. And I think this is the first. If we can get them to go after Motorola and our protective clothing providers, we'd be in a good spot, because there's no question about it. But I share this with you, not to put it in your face. This is out of my control. This is out of my control. In 2023, these were the prices. You move it up to 2025, it's 60% more. Now I realize trash trucks are very similar, but this is our fleet. This is everything we operate on. It's life safety equipment. I'm not going to pound my chest over that, but this is what we just paid, $2.2 million for this piece of apparatus, and move it back to when we bought it originally, $1.2 million. So there's $1 million outside of my control, and every station has a complement of something in this picture. Now, doesn't stop there. I've shared this with you. We thought this was devastating to basically share with anybody, $33,760. Now, it's not an annual cost. I get that. I got to outfit them, and then I got to basically replace it over the course of time. But that figure is crazy. But that's not the figure today. That figure is $39,000. So within a 2-year window, we've already gone up almost another $5,500. Outside my control. Now, I say that's actually not true. I'm doing everything. This is about and very similar to what you're doing, Molly, is warehousing. Central warehouse, we try to buy in bulk, take the Costco methodology, all the organizations around us, let's buy the same stuff so we can get it cheaper. But it's tough. There are departments that don't want to play in that arena. They want their own colored gear and everything else. And our folks have been very open to it. But we are trying to reduce these costs at every corner that we possibly can. as we move forward in the conversation, I just want to put these out there. Somehow, some way, the plan has to take into consideration the future staffing needs. Now, this isn't building a kingdom. This is what is actually on the books today. Okay, the capital expenses, as we know, apparatus replacement program with the 25 budget reductions, we extended that by 50%. Well, I'll just tell you, that's not sustainable. We're going to have apparatus issues. We got 30-year apparatus. Fire Station 3, the relocation is currently unfunded. Now, I put this figure, this is a spitball, okay? It was at 10 million for Station 10. The further we push this out, okay, and I'm not trying to rush the system, 13 million is going to be our guesstimate. Phase 2 of the training center. This was built into the strategic plan with the fire safety tax and the mill levy increase. We estimated for each phase 4.5 million. Okay, you see me starting with phase 2 because the rural is already funded in full phase 1 of the training center renovations. The Fire Station 5 remodel, 4 to 6 million. Again, I'm spitballing on that, just basically taking half of what's potential for Station 3's relocation. And then lastly, 4.5 million for the last phase of the training center. So here's where we are today. Repeated the slides, repeated the funding. Here's a couple of things just to pepper and start the conversation. So what we talked about in May of 2025, we were going to basically take it to the voters. The city voters would need to approve 11.186 mils. So that was they want to include into the rural district. Now, at the same time, on the back side of that, the city would need to provide a portion of their 9.56 mils because we have well established that we cannot have all the mills, nor would we ever advocate that. I understand 3 legs on a stool, okay? And subsidize the balance. Now, the figures I'm using are hypothetical. City gives a portion of the 9.56 mils. Voters approve to pay the balance, i.e. 8.77 mils. Voters approve 2.4 mil increase. Okay, why did I use those numbers? Because that's what the rural passed. So that's why I'm using that. I'm not saying 877 is what we would ask for, just throwing it out there. Does everybody understand that? Obviously, we never made it to that mark. Okay. Retain the fire authority model with a revised formula is another option. So city pays their portion of the budget, whatever that is determined to be, using property tax and sales tax. Now, the figure is revenue-based with a percentage cap above and below. That is the Fort Collins formula. So they base it off of revenue. There is a percentage cap that it can go up, and there's a percentage cap that it can go down. The key factor with the PFA model that has been missing in every conversation is they've already added an additional tax. Keep Fort Collins great is a sales tax that was included, okay? You don't see it anymore because it was voted indefinitely. Basically, it is a tax without an expiration. So they've removed it from being identified in there. And I validated this with the fire chief. So that's 1% of that tax goes to the PFA. That's one model. The expanded authority model. Now, this is new to the conversation. And this is what we had a conversation with the board about. And I'd ask you to kind of keep this in the room just as a conversation piece, is Berthoud Fire Protection District. We've had many conversations as an authority as to what their future is. Berthoud Fire Protection District, we work with them seamlessly every single day. We train with them virtually every single day. They have expressed interest in becoming part of the LFRA. Their fire chief is due to retire, okay, and he has no succession plan. So he has expressed interest in coming into the authority or bringing the organization into the authority. Full transparency, okay? They are facing a 2025 budget reduction of 500,000, so a shortage of 500,000 based on oil and gas. At the same time, their fire district is currently operating at 13.8 mils. Okay, so we wouldn't want to form a fire district immediately with them because they would drop their millage down to ours. They are pursuing a 1% sales tax in May. Now that 1% sales tax, unfortunately, it's not going to cover the 500K. they're estimating about 220,000. Okay, the figure they're posting is 368. They also have the election costs and other fees in there. They're only going to net about 220,000 if that passes. Now,
Chief, question there on that. Sales tax, is that earmarked for fire only?
yes, they are a fire protection district, so they are separate from the city of Berthoud. They're 100% independent, so it's 100%.
So it's not the city doing, it's the district.
Correct.
It's their sales tax.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I didn't understand. Okay.
Yeah, and remember, and help me out here, Linda. We used to only be able to operate as a fire district using our fire district tax. Now we can supplement that with our own sales tax.
It's my understanding that was a recent amendment to the special district.
Last election. That's correct. So to your point, okay, we were right at the back or front end of that conversation. It had not passed at the time it had passed.
No, it
was in the process.
A late passage in the legislature. Yeah.
Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Now, here's the other element. We currently provide their fire marshal services. So that is basically an IGA that we created with them. So our inspection crew goes down there. Now it's fully compensated. We get compensated for it. So it's a revenue generator for us. We use it as kind of a succession plan, and it creates common codes across the board. So it makes it better for both organizations. So that's an interesting animal there. The other animal, okay, and this may be a little bit contentious, Thompson Valley EMS. Okay, I've worked across 7 different states. As a fire chief or a chief officer, I've seen many formations of fire departments, including districts. I can tell you, Thompson Valley EMS is an anomaly. Okay, they are a special district of 1.75 mils. Okay, so they create their own or have their own income. Obviously, it's very minimal, but they also charge for their services. Okay, they have 4 stations within our city. Prime example, Lake Loveland. You go to North Lake, there's a station there, advertises a fire station. Look on the wall, it's Thompson Valley's. Used to be our fire station. My conversation is 4 stations, they can move into our stations tomorrow. Now, what that does is that potentially frees up their real estate, sell that real estate off, create some capital, get our capital plan back in place, but it's not LFRA doing this, okay? It's Thompson Valley EMS. You want to build a new headquarters. We need a new headquarters. What if we pool our funds? Okay, so operationally, you stay like this. Parallel tracks, we're not doing this. But administratively, you start eliminating redundant costs. When you talk about capital expenses, okay, warehousing, to Molly's point, we could start doing warehousing with them, fleet services with them. There's a multitude of savings that we can generate. Now, it can't be a one-way street, can't be all LFRA. It has to be us coming together. Now, I peppered this out to our crews, and Craig and Anthony can kind of vouch for this or say differently. I peppered this out, and I suspected I'd feel some pushback. In my conversations and my station visits, zero pushback within our organization. I was very surprised. But part of that, and James or Jim, this is something I want to share with you, is when we keep our disciplines like this, okay, and I know you and I have had conversations, there is a financial savings when you do this, but there's also skill sets that can be compromised and lost. But when you do this, the conversation is absolutely no pushback. It's an opportunity. At the same time, they have 1 station in Berthoud. If this would come through, the Berthoud station, they want to relocate. So they would be getting rid of that station anyway, okay? There could be an opportunity for them to relocate to a more strategic location as an EMS-only station with those pooled funds. Everybody's mesmerized in the room. I appreciate it. Maybe not. That was my last slide. So, Jim, you had some.
Well, we've also had a discussion about increasing the area of the district, right, at the board. So, you know, that would add to that last slide that you had up there. If we double the size of the district or desert the rest of the 2 kind of areas out and give us better protection zone 2 than what we have now. But needless to say that that's an opportunity. Can we go back to the slide where you had the 3 that we just walked through, the 3 options? I want to add a couple to that one. It's at the bottom.
So this is where we are today. This is transitioning to a district using the formula before.
Right.
There. This
Yeah, let's
is,
stay there for 1 second. So I wanted to touch on, some of the discussions you all had in the past, and granted, we're cleaning the slate so we can, have those discussions again, but a couple things that have transpired probably during those discussions have made it hard. I mean, obviously, the city cut staff, we closed down hours at the library, we did a whole bunch of other things, and so we didn't have ads, we had subtractions. And police departments say they need 14 people to be where they're at today, and so forth. And I'll be asking again for people this year. Vince knows he needs a couple in his office. I mean, so I have a lot of demand and I just don't have the money. And so that creates some of the pressure that you feel. I have the airport looking at going to authority at the library, two of the commission and also Friends of the Library want to become a district too. And so that's going on. And they want to take the property tax. Well, there's not much property tax to go around because we're lower than most of our neighbors, even evident by just what we have here. So our 9.56, if I remember the discussion that happened on 8/13 of last year when you were in front of council, it was like 16 million was the number used that the 9.56 generates. I don't know how accurate that is. And so and your current budget's what, 2019 point something. So, and then we had the fire truck and had to pay that extra and so forth. I didn't see the impact fees where we just said impact fee, but we needed an estimated dollar amount that will be contributed by development and growth, but that's slowed too in the last couple of years for various reasons, but we won't go there. But we'll be getting impact fees, which could be a pretty substantial number in good years and not so substantial in bad years, but it still adds to the equation of the support that's going in that wasn't there before during the changes that occurred. But I didn't see a number. I always just seen 80-20 in the dollars with that, but not the impact. And then you said plus impact fees, but I haven't seen that number. Something we'll talk about or the finance committee can grapple with and look at that contribution in the formula, for the future. But the two, I'll go back. So obviously the expand the model, I already made the comment, if we expand the district boundaries, right, without Berthoud, without EMS, and I have my thoughts on that too. I don't think those are bad. I think that's a good idea to look at those opportunities, and there's reasons for that. And as you well know, the community I just left, we were taking over all the EMS response. And so we were going to staff that accordingly, but we had private entities there and we were eliminating the private entity just because we go on a call anyhow. And then we throw our EMTs on their ride and then get reimbursed for costs. It was stupid. Why don't we just consistency of care throughout, and then working with Exxon to have a camera on. So when they're there, the ER doctor is watching what's going on while you're transporting and while you're taking care of the patient. Some cool stuff, but needless to say, I think there's opportunity there. And then also on there's another one, which Greeley did, which I looked at, okay, what everybody else around the area really was an authority, and then they broke it out again, the district, and the city went back to do city, and the district went back and did district. So that's a model we need to talk about. Our neighbor did it, and there was reasons why the neighbor did it. But I think
not correct.
When we look at all the models, we need to look at all of them. And that one we may find quickly because we already have had multiple discussions, maybe dispatch, maybe other things. There's savings inherently when you merge together.
Yeah.
And so right now I kind of have a weird model because you could tell over the time of the 12 years that the authority's been forming all the IGA changes, city used to provide support staff. Then you started slowly adding the support staff and took that away. So now you have 2 finance people, you have 2 HR people, you have two of everything, which is okay, but there's an overabundance of costs then too that go into that. And so if you grow and you eliminate HR people and finance people at the Berthoud and the aid company, then there's inherent savings that start to develop. And right now it's just kind of an inefficient way to do things. We have some duplication that we need to consider. So the break off is still potential because of that additional cost. No different than if you go and form a district. Now you totally have to be separate, but you're in a good spot to do that because you've already inherently are enduring those costs that you would be as a district unless you were contracting with another entity to provide those services, right? Which would then be a direct cost to the district. But on the numbers, just quickly.
Let me pause you just for a second. I want to share 2 things with Emily and Matt. What he's talking about is the inclusion. Okay, so we are extending our district into further reaches of the rural. to no man's land. Literally, we cover that from a response perspective, even though they're outside. What the extension of, the inclusion election will allow us to do is take non-emergent services, mitigation services out there and be paid for by taxpayers. So they're getting a service right now and not paying taxes. We're going to bring them in. That's the effort there. Going back to Greeley, while they did break off, Greeley still services that fire protection district. It has an IGA formed there. That fire protection district is sitting on $28 million in reserves, okay? And they will not reopen that contract, okay? So it's problematic to the point that Greeley is actually looking to try to transition to a fire district and all other options.
Right, right, kind of back to kind of where we're at, right? But it's just something we gotta at least put on the table, because we'll be asked that question at some point in the process. And I just think we need to make sure that the groups, the working groups, vet all those options so we don't walk into a meeting and somebody, well, did we think of this? Yes, we did. And this is why we're not considering it versus not even addressing it. And then we get ourselves in trouble when that happens, because we will be asked a question, especially when we talk about taxing. Yeah. Unfortunately, we got people in the community, no matter what we do, if we talk about any taxing at all, it's gonna impact us. It just, we're back to, you know, the aversion towards taxes in the community. Number wise, the numbers are what the numbers are. We can sit down. I'm not sure I agree with the 8.77, basically because we have the 10.4 that we got hit with the, you know, the elimination of the one tax. Sure, we've had some growth in our tax because of that. I had a lengthy discussion with a couple individuals after the council meeting Tuesday night, because they were there to talk about metro districts and the Parkside, and then the individual that came up from Denver, but
okay.
But I had long talks with them about the growth, and taxes have grown because values have grown. And part of the reason values have grown is because supply and demand. The demand is higher than the supply right now in the housing market. So you continue to see house hikes. In fact, since I moved here, it's gone up almost 2% again. So just in 3.5 months, the housing's gone up 2% in cost. And so that said, that is your two figures. One, your mills, and two is your value. So as your value is going up, your receipts are coming in at a higher amount, right? So inevitably, and then you overlay that with metro districts. So it's 2029 to be the first hit. Between the sales tax and the property tax right now, we're saying, man, that'll be about a $5 million growth to the city. So it's not a huge number, but obviously if we give away some mills, there'll be an impact to that. Sure. And so we have to consider that. It certainly doesn't make up the 10.4. And that's what we talked about in our short meeting that evening, was to be careful even on those numbers, because of if we're spending 19 million now and then we give you 10, 11 million of it, and then you go ask for the rest, and then taxes are higher. Now our chances to ever get more taxes is out the window for a while. I then have this shortfall of the 10.4 I'm still dealing with. And even though I free up the 19 million, I just gave away 10 or 11 million. So I've made up 7 of the 10.4, but I have demands across the city and facilities shut down right now that I'm not even meeting those demands. So, and there's a lot of pressure internal on that, as you well know, and you sit in some of those meetings and watch the dynamic going on. It's just a frustration. So again, talking level of service, we can address the fire. We've walked through it. I look forward to doing that. To what level I participate, I'll come in and occasionally and probably blow up the room and tell you what I do. But you know, let the work groups really work through what the work groups need to work through and find a landing spot. And I think everything's on the table. You look at, as we talked even about a little bit of sales tax with a little bit of the mill levy, then adjust your own mill levy. Your mill levy in the district is where, well, you're at 11 something, right? And we're at 9 something. And it's like, well, wait a minute, we're collecting 11, but you're still only paying the 20. So your fund balance is growing right now on the 11. So the question's always, do we reduce ours? Do we refund back? Unless the city can catch up? Well, you don't, but there's that money sitting in the bank as well right now. That's kind of that reserve. If you take the rest of the community to the same 11 and their 11, our 11 are bringing about what you're getting today without the impact fee. And you got to remember that too. Then how do we address that, right, on the rollover? And then you'll have a little bit of a gain in 2029, but it won't be that material, right, when we look at just the property tax. So you're probably going to have to do a combination But then you've got the double taxation back on the district side. Now the whole thing's the district. And so we have to be careful of that. So there's a lot of complexities, but we'll let the groups walk through it. And I'm not sure where to land. I know what we're doing today, there's a lot of frustration probably on both sides of the equation, both at the city, at least at the staffing level, and from some of the discussions, and likewise for the district, you're all frustrated because I see it every time I come to a board meeting, we ever talk about a number, it gets kind of a little heated. We're good about it, but you can tell there's a frustration. And so for me, we got to solve it. We can't sit here and have this. This divides the community, it divides us. We're here to serve. And so we got to find a way to land the plane. And it's going to entail, no matter what we do, it's going to entail going back to the voters.
Yeah, and Jim, let me just take a couple of those points. I appreciate all of them. Again, this is a hypothetical. Take the 8.77 out. I did it.
I said, we're starting with a clean slate. We'll figure something.
And the reason I put this, and again, the chairman and I mean, this frustrated the chairman that I put this out. I'm not throwing you under the bus here. But I wanted you to understand that we keep staring at these two pots. This one's not growing. We've got to look at every option available. Okay. I don't know that this is the answer, but I wanted to at least set the tone that we need to be incredibly creative. This has never come into the conversation up to this point. So this is a whole nother added aspect. So all things are on the table. The one thing I will just kind of correct there, when you go to a fire district, you have parity. Okay, everybody's paying the same. So the rural district is not.
No, it fixes the problem, right?
That's
When you have
exactly
district wide, we
So
don't.
there's a distinct advantage and elimination of that argument.
Maybe we're all at 10 or.
Chief, if I could make a point on that. My frustration with this, quite honestly, is we've been in these conversations for about 4 years, before the chief even got here, talking about a district. And we're basically no better off than when we started this conversation 4 years ago. And now we're talking about adding other variables in there. And I feel like maybe we need to focus on fire and rescue and talk about this other stuff later. And I realize the value that can be added there, but it's at somebody else's expense. And I think we have to fix what's on our end first. We got to come up with our right formulas and make sure we're doing everything right before we start getting it all confused with EMS and Bertha. Not that those aren't good opportunities. I just don't know that now's the time.
And so again, whatever.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say, I've been on the school board 2 terms, and I've been with the fire authority since 2009. During that time with the school board, we passed 2 bonds, we passed 2 mills. While I've been with the fire, we've passed 2 bond mills. My point being, we can get this passed, but we have to be transparent. We have to be singing out of the same hymn book. We have to act like we have good governance. And no offense to city council and city government, I believe that's why they lost the election. It had nothing to do with the fire department. It passed in the rural, didn't pass the city. We had the same messages both places, but people felt like city government was broke. So if we can fix the image, and I think it's being done, and no offense to anybody, and this is where you can help, Jim. I think we can make a fire district work if we can sell it to the voters. The problem is selling it. It's all on the front end.
The complication, and I'll take Jim's point, and we discussed this, is if we go, okay, puts the city at a deficit, there is an additional revenue. They still have to find additional, there could be a savings, but is it enough to sustain all the other departments that are facing?
That's where you get the undercurrent. So we just, when we're done, all groups gotta agree, right? We all gotta be on the same page. Wherever we land, whatever the numbers are, we all gotta, if we're not on the same page, it will be extremely difficult. You have the same council. I'll be frank, my career's been a long one. I've never lost a bond question. I've never lost a sales tax question. And my entire career, and I've had a lot of them. Now, they lost multiple times before we changed how we did it, before it got there and said, no, we're not doing it that way anymore. We really need to go out and engage the community, have open, upfront discussions. And really important for me is that both boards, all of council, all of you all need to be together. If there's one or two that are not, it just divides the community. It's used for political reason, whatever. It's a nightmare. We all got to be on the same page when we walk out of here. Likewise, going to the community, I think it's doable. I think that people want to have a level of service. They don't like the level of service we're getting right now because we got just, it's not a great place to be in. And we got to have that honest discussion. I also have to be careful though on our side is to be frank about it and make sure that I protect it. And you mentioned at the beginning, Chief, we have had that discussion. I appreciate you bringing that up. We can't do something that's detrimental to the city either, because I got police on that side. I got public safety. I got roads. I got other things that are at the high end of the community's needs and wants as well. And with parks and trails and everything else. And I know everybody individually in their own silos say, oh yeah, this is the most important thing. Of course it is to you, but to the community, it depends. It depends on that last call that they had or the last interaction with the city. And so I got to try to balance all that. I think we're heading down the right path. For me, after I watched that 813, we haven't met since 813 and council said, go meet more. Mm-hmm. And so it's been months. And so I appreciate that. And it's probably some of the frustration on your guys on the district side. We need to come together and get there. I think we can get there pretty quick. This is not total rocket science, but there's going to have to be a little give take. Then there's going to have to be a reality check of what will the community accept. And maybe we do it in a couple phases, not all at once, but look at phasing into that process. Maybe you still have a little support from the city, and then you look to bring on Berthoud and EMS and others, and maybe that adds to the pot. And they have efficiencies of not having 2 of everything or 3 of everything. And then you're able to grow the pot even more then, but we get it in place. So sometimes you don't go for it all at once, like the city. You know, we lost, we go out and ask for 1%. Well, we could ask for 0.5% or 0.75, 0.25 goes away once we deal with some of the capital needs that have been put on hold for years. And same with the fire. There's ways that sometimes when you offer something that you just don't go want it all today, that it's going to fix the world. You take steps towards it and you allow the community to see the advantage. And we got to deliver. So once we do this, what are the advantages to, Joe Public to go forward and form a district? We really have to talk about that as well. We have a limited time because once the board or the 2 governing boards agree that we're going to go do something, then we're done because we can't spend our money's taxpayers' money on influence that outcome of the election. So we then have to back into the timing, which you've already provided last time. If we were going out this year, we would have already, I have been there, we're not there. So now we're looking at the following year and whatever dates are available to us. But we really need to back in and say, when do we need a completion date die? So I think the first meeting of the groups is to come up with, not today, but a timeline. And then let's try to live with that timeline. Now, probably gonna have some battles in there. But what I would appreciate as well is we have the battles in the rooms that we're sitting in, that we don't take them to the public. We don't take them because all that does is divide the community again. They hear about it, they see it, and then the 813 is an example. I mean, a lot of the community were probably reacting to what transpired. And for me, that's the meeting in here. It's a meeting between you, I, Chief, and the district, whoever at the district, and just sit down and really decide what we're going to do. Then we take it to the governing bodies when we're all on the same page and say, this is a great plan. We're ready to go. This is going to work out amazing. It's going to provide us, it's going to continue to provide quality and excellence and service and all that good stuff. So for what it's worth, I'm there, but now it's just getting in the room and figuring it out. And it may be one of the options, and maybe we, divorce at the end of the day, and those are never good. Maybe we continue to do what we're doing, and and then accept what we're doing, right? Not have the differences of the 80-20 and all that hanging over our heads, or the study. And I would look at it differently than what you did. You maybe it was just call volume, but when I start looking at things, it's also distance to serve. If you go out and do your 5-mile circles, or do you do response times, you have some stations that are much busier than others. So you may have to double staff.
I'm perfectly fine doing any analysis from
but all of that, there's no perfect model, right? You go to NFPA standards, and we can talk about all that, and 2 in, 2 out, and then we get into all the depths of that. We're not providing that now on 1 truck, but how often do we send 1 truck? But if we enlarge the district, we're sending 2 trucks or 3 trucks to a fire. Now we're short in the community, and I understand the rovers. We've had the discussion on the rovers, and we need to staff that up, because if you don't, then we're short staffing, and then we're calling in people on overtime, and then you'll all get frustrated and then you'll be demanding more things that you're probably demanding on Rovers and get that part. So anyhow, I went off. I feel better. Now we can just set up our groups.
I don't even smoke, Jim, but I'm getting ready to go smoke.
I'm gonna help you.
So, let me kind of sum this up. So to your point, and I cannot say, echo this enough. This is the route. It doesn't go to a governing body outside of this room, this group. When we agree, we get in a huddle, we say we're going, then we go to the governing bodies, whether it be the rural district or city council, we go together. And as the fire chief, I'm gonna say this, I am Switzerland. I'm not on either side. The other thing I want to echo is I live in this community, so the decisions we ultimately make affect me. I don't go off somewhere else. I live here, like many of you, okay? I think that's an important point. Molly.
I was just gonna add that I think it's important to remember that last fall and late summer, early fall, when we were working in those initial groups and really struggling, I think a large piece of that was the uncertainty around, will we be able to pass our sales tax increase or not? And not knowing what that outcome was, it was so hard for the city to be able to commit to anything. Now we know the answer. It wasn't what we wanted, but at least we know where we stand. And I feel much more optimistic about moving forward.
And I appreciate that. And I want to call attention to the Heisman Trophy. Okay, the Heisman Trophy is like this, right? It's not what we're gonna do.
Right.
It's not gonna be the LFRA is fine and the city's screwed. It's not the way we work. So I say that as a joke, but I think it's important. We're in this together. So whatever the plan is, and Jim, your point, this is about bridging the gap. When we had the fire safety tax, Andrea Sampson asked, can we put a sunset on it? Well, you don't hire people with a sunset.
No.
Okay, so what we agreed to do, and Mayor, if you can vouch for me here, is we said the fire safety tax is a window of opportunity to bridge us to a district. So what that does is that subsidizes the system until we can transition to a district. So we were bringing revenue in, okay, and it wasn't gonna put the city at a deficit, okay? It was a time gap filler. And then once we transitioned to a district, then we were out of the city's general fund, and there would be an opportunity to replenish. So we were on the same page. Our terminology was a little bit different at the time.
But if we break off, chief, then I have no way to use your 99% to get other stuff passed.
No, and I think
So I'm just being honest about it.
We get it.
Everything I've done with bonds, normally, you know, if you have a couple, you got police and fire and every one of them, and you got something that people want, parks, and you just don't isolate yourself. But you use those things that people, they don't want to build a new city hall for a bunch of bureaucrats, but they'll build a new fire station, right, for firefighters. And so we know that in the room. And I'll be frank and honest about that, but I have to play that into the formula a little bit too, is that I want our core services to be successful. Right now, we're not successful in most of our areas. It's just, and I got to figure that out, right? And that's part of the budget process this year and everything else. So
Can I ask
what
a
it's
question
worth.
about that?
Yeah.
This is kind of maybe a long circuitous route to this, but the city's core services are their primary objective, right? Streets, water, police, et cetera. Is there an option to divorce the Chilson Center and turn it over to a private organization, a library? That allows more money to go back.
But you can, but what they immediately want to do, like library, they want to form a district and they want the 9 mills. Or
Right.
portion 3 mills or 4 mills.
Well,
Well,
at 9 mills, they're getting quite the bump.
they have their own ideas, right? So everybody, but that, there's not enough mills. If we were at 15, 16 mil, maybe closer to some of our neighbors or in that ballpark with 4.83% sales tax, like Fort Collins or something, we could break some of that off to do all of these things. We don't. We have 3 and we have the 9.56. Yeah, 5. So the reality is we don't have the ability to break them up because they need to do it. And if they go to a vote and they fail, then people are still going to want the service, right? And so now you've created that. Plus you can't go out for a question for a library district, same time you're doing a fire district, same time, because people would just see, oh my God, we're going to have all these taxes and all these districts, which if you look back in time, Amendment 1 Douglas Bruce forced us to start looking at districts as an option, kind of like the California model 3 years before that. And so we're in that place here anyhow. But right now, no, we can't. I've kind of, because they're pushing too, I said, no, the one we need to deal with first is the fire. to get done with fire. We're working a little bit on maybe an airport authority and a different discussion there. But we gotta fix fire before we consider library, before we consider the others, because it's just too much bandwidth. It's eating up too much time. There's only so much hours in the day, and I don't sleep much as it is. Drink coffee all day, but it's the point, I just can't function at it, having all that, and Vince's staff and finance staff, we just don't have the bandwidth to do that because we've had to make reductions or not add where we need to add. So I appreciate
Yeah, we
that.
totally understand. I'm just thinking of other things that Joe Citizen could purchase and run for the city that wouldn't cost the city anything.
Yeah.
Chilson Center.
But we know, I mean, we closed a few things down and we hear about it just about every week. You know, the little things you think are, you know, lower hanging fruit on the branch, and some a bit different, you know, but you know, people were used to the old rule, and we've talked about it in the authority board, but also it, you know, once you offer it, it's hard to take it away. Government, even though it may not ever serve, it served 10,000 people and now it serves 2 people. It's hard to take it away because those 2 will show up at the meeting, right? And so it's just a world we operate in, and we know that, and that's why I'm kind of that long run. I look at it, for every action, there's a reaction. And I want to make sure that when we like hire staff or otherwise, that's a long-term commitment and things like that. So for whatever it's worth, we could have more just sidebar discussion, don't bog down the group. But Chief, where were you were thinking, what, 2 groups, 1 legal, 1 finance, and who's in those groups and how often do you want to meet? All
So
that.
we have divided that out previously. So we've got representation from city finance, from the rural, and then LFRA is kind of the neutral party in between. So I guess the vision here, tell me if anybody, and obviously we have FRAC represented as well, and a representative from the union.
I'm political.
So our intention is to meet with that group first and then come back to the legal group.
36%.
So we'd be providing progress reports that if we're steering in the wrong direction legally, you all can get us back on track.
City council.
So does that make sense? Because I really, and Vince, you tell me, you haven't said anything. Is there anything from your side that you need to throw in before we meet with the finance group?
No, I don't think so, Chief. You know, from my perspective, from where we left it last time. Well, it really was, I know we're starting fresh, but we're really kind of in the same spot from my perspective. And that is that we're gonna look at a variety of different models. And it's hard for lawyers to, well, it's not hard. Our usefulness will be diminished at this juncture because we don't know what the objective is, right? I think we can help if on all, you know, singular questions that come through those discussions for the finance group. But at this juncture, having the lawyers talk about these various models when they're so, you know, sort of conceptual at this juncture, I don't think that's helpful until we have at least some arrow pointing in a general direction and we can start to advise on that. So I think strategically, Chief, I'm all for it. I don't have a problem with it.
But we will, one second, Tom, we'll pepper the legal side with the details that we're creating. Okay, and again, if there's something that you're seeing that is obvious, to get us back on track. Tom.
From a legal perspective, though, if there are changes, like it sounds like there is an ability now to leverage a sales tax where there wasn't before when we had those initial conversations, those would be welcomed updates that we would like before we start the financial investigation as well. So if stuff like that has changed, that's real and relevant. So.
Yeah, and I guess that goes to my point. So for example, if Molly, Brian, or Matt has a question, I know that they'll come to me, hey, is this even feasible as part of our discussion? We can advise on that while those conversations are ongoing. I think my point is getting the lawyers all together at this juncture to talk about concepts. That's probably not a good use of our time.
No.
Okay. Molly, did I get you?
Yeah, I just had a comment, but really it's just direct to Vince, so I'll just touch base with you later.
Okay. Yep, Anthony.
Not to rewind too much, kind of keep the story short. I just want to touch on the expanded authority model here. Chairman Swanee, I 100% agree with you. Figuring out just our current internal financial problem is definitely a must. But I do want to just kind of emphasize, just from an operations viewpoint, the extreme benefit of merging with Berthoud and merging with Thompson Valley EMS. So just slight background for me on all that. My background personally with mergers, that sort of thing, extends long before working here. I've worked for 3 different departments between being a volunteer, a part-timer, and now a full-timer here at LFRA, as well as growing up with my dad being a firefighter, who went through mergers of district and 2 districts merging together, and how that would kind of impact everything on an ops level. These opportunities are something that if we don't take the opportunities when they kind of present us now, down the road, it'll become a bigger problem trying to create those mergers later. And how that benefits operations on our viewpoint, say we only did the Thompson Valley EMS one. On an operations level, that would actually enhance our services that we can provide to allow us to train more closely with Thompson Valley to help, not that we're not good EMTs, but we don't train on EMS every day, but we do run EMS calls quite a bit. So training directly with them in our station, learning would boost our skill sets without even a increased cost of money. Medically, merging with Berthoud Fire. This year alone, I've already been on 2 fires in Berthoud between wildland fire and structure fire. We respond with them so frequently that we're giving them free services, if we want to talk about it in that way, of providing up our forces down to their fires, and vice versa, them coming up to us. So I 100% agree with what you were saying with wanting to keep fix our financials first before bolting on. But with those opportunities presenting themselves in such a way, it would be a long time before those windows reopen. And the benefits there with adding all that in when we can is immense. Just to kind of add a little bit of operations viewpoint on that. So I think it's definitely valid to be looking at that as well.
I have a couple other things, if I may. Mergers with fire departments don't come around very often. Typically, when a fire chief leaves, is that opportunity for the merger. If this passes and they get another fire chief, this opportunity will go away for 5, 7, 10 years. So I'm not saying that we have to do it. I'm just saying that the opportunity, when the fruit is ripe, eat it. That's Berthoud Fire right now. Thompson Valley you can take a little more time with that, but typically one other thing that I know about Thompson Valley, I have a little bit of information in Thompson Valley. That 1.75 mils that they currently collect is typically in the fire department. And they're running flush with all their operations, they're doing well, they're building buildings, they're moving headquarters. This is another opportunity for us to incorporate finances that would typically be in the fire department. And incorporate people that want to do things on both sides, but typically I think where your pushback is going to come from is from the Thompson Valley side, people not wanting to be firefighters. Mm-hmm. So you have to be careful with that. And then duplication of effort is significant between the 2 organizations. We've doubled everything. Staff, buildings. So there's an opportunity here. So what we're saying here is we're having a hard time finding funding for things. I'm not saying to use them as our crutch, but there's an opportunity there to incorporate and make savings and build a stronger organization out of it. On both those. One other thing about Berthoud too, they're poised for significant growth. You saw their mill levies 13.8. Their town council, if I heard this right, is about to open the doors on development. And if their development goes strong at a 13.8 mils and we're merged with them, there's another opportunity for us to backfill our coffers.
One quick question I had on that Berthoud Fire Protection District model. You said there's 500,000 in the hole, it seems like, in terms of their budget, but they're teeing up this tax that could eat away at about half of it. But so either way, with a merger, I mean, we have to just no rose-colored glasses. We're kind of buying some debt, right? Because we're buying we walk into it with an obligation to serve that area of the state, and we would not necessarily have the resources to do that, even at the level that they would like to. So we'd be relying upon future growth in order to help backfill not only the Berthoud area's needs, but the needs of the full authority.
Yeah, let me kind of get into that a little bit. Great question, and that's the reason I put it up there for full transparency. There's a challenge there. I can say this with a high degree of confidence, 500,000, there is a large portion of that. So if they pass that tax, there's a large portion of that we could fix immediately. Our prevention services are already one of the aspects that they're paying out that would basically go away. We'd be part of that, right? they use consultants quite a bit. We have redundancy, no disrespect, Ben. So Ben from JBG, he is their financial advisor. Emily's firm is their legal advisor. Now, that doesn't go away because we have that with the rural district and we have that with the city. But there's county, there's all those facets that realistically, their numbers are not that big. You're talking about a 38 member fire department running out of 2 fire stations. So, and that's literally, I'm glad you brought it up. I'm just trying to be transparent. I think we could cover that pretty easily, but that's where we would have to dig and probe and make sure we're doing the right thing.
I would assume you wouldn't be making an executive officer either, that would be leaving, so that's,
Yeah.
that's your savings right there too, so.
Yeah, and actually that was, go ahead, Ben, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add something to this. They had a reduction in revenue. They don't have a deficit. So they still have a balanced budget. I just want to make that clear. The way this PowerPoint looks, they don't have a deficit. They have a balanced budget, but they did have a reduction in revenue.
My apologies, Ben.
But I think that kind of leads to the conversation, right? And the conversation is kind of, well, are we going to have to carry that deficit? They don't have a deficit, so you don't have to worry about that.
Well, that's super helpful. Well, I mean, then clearly it's an opportunity. Somebody should explore.
Trying to go somewhere else with that. Oh, to Tom's point. So the original thought, they had an operations division chief position open, and when the fire chief retired, those are 2 executive salaries. That when you look across salaries, our salaries are slightly higher than those. You could create parity in salaries literally with the savings of those 2 positions. So it was not, nobody'd lose their job. Over the course of time, you could look at attrition needs to thin the force if you needed to in some of the other positions, but anyway, great question. Yeah.
Question on this, if we were to absorb both these, I'm assuming this is gonna take the approval of voters.
No.
No voters involved?
No. So that's the other reason I wanted to keep me in line. That's the reason I wanted to put it out there, and I said it, we're tax adverse community. Every time we go back to the voters, as much as we educate, we're still vulnerable to that day. In this case, we could strategically do things, and I don't think we're pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. We've got to educate still, but we don't have to have their approval. We have to have the 2 boards' approval and nod, and we can move forward.
Essentially, it's expanding your current IGA to add
IGAs.
parties or to amend constituency on the board. We'd probably have to talk about those things.
So
but
that,
it
for
would just
instance, the
amend.
1.75 mils that Thompson Valley charges, that would come to the district, but it would be earmarked for them only, or what would happen with that mill levy?
It depends on how, sorry, Lynn.
Yeah, I agree with, I think where you're going. It depends on, if we're talking an expanded authority, they're just another contract member.
But we're talking expanded district, not authority, right?
We would eventually have to go to a district, which would add another layer of complexity with the other entities.
That's
But
what
to
I'm
start,
asking.
the authority would just, you would do an IGA like we have multiple, the IGA and then all the amendments, you would just do an IGA. And you wouldn't set the 80-20 maybe in that scenario. You would just say, you're going to keep your current rates intact and we're going to collect whatever those rates provide, rather than trying to do a division of how much we're going to each contribute to it. We're just going to say, bring your 1% if it's passed, and then your 13.8 mils to the table, and whatever that is, that's what we collect, and that's what the IGA would
So
say.
we're talking authority model only, not district.
Yes.
For now,
Let me
district,
take this.
we layer it again.
Yeah, let me take this. I did this graphic for a reason. Big pot. 4 contributors feeding in, okay, at their current rate. Right now, I think we're jumping ahead to say, hey, all 11.1, we're still at that 80-20. You've got to basically revamp the IGA. So these are bolt-ons to the current authority model.
Let me ask the question another way. It looks like there's 3 opportunities. One of them is a district model, one is expanded
Just
authority
literally,
model.
I don't know what Brian and Vince have discussed, so there may be more. Is there more based on your recommendation or?
I mean, I think there are variations, but those are the 3 general models.
Okay.
But going back to your original, there were 3 options. So if we went to district model, it would not include at that time taking in Berthoud and Thompson. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Okay. And I guess that was my point earlier. Do we want to do a district or do we want to do an expanded authority model? I mean,
So
it gets
there's-
very complicated if we're gonna go to a district. And tell me if I'm wrong, if we're gonna go to a district and take in Berthoud and Thompson at the same time.
Yeah, this was a bridge to a district because we don't have an opportunity to go to the voters right now. All right, so this is a bridge. Eventually, let's just say 3 to 5 years from now, okay, we've got this running smooth. Now we want to formally transition to a district. You got to dissolve Thompson Valley EMS because they are a special district. Okay, Berthoud, basically you reduce their mill levy to the respective mill levy you're setting, and they're in.
I would go to the.
Am I correct on that?
Yeah, they would just.
So we need to say which direction.
So the voters would actually get.
Yeah. But it is a reduction in their mill levy.
Or we raise ours to theirs.
But chief, when if we were to do that, even though Thompson Valley EMS is a district, that's still
It shouldn't make a
okay.
difference.
Yeah, because all they're doing is they're a contractor to it. They're exactly what the city is to
It used
the
to.
LFRA right now.
So do they have like a board or commission, and does Berthoud have a board or commission? And would they then need to have members added to your?
So you would expand out, would you say potentially to a 7-person board?
Probably
Yes, that kind of
with
thing.
representation from each, okay.
But for an authority, it could even be 9.
So it depends. If
But you
you
put
go
one
with that, I don't know how that would affect the representation.
Really, the objective here is voter interaction.
Right,
Okay,
no,
we can kind of
it's-
push the voter
I think it's really
interaction down the
interesting
road.
to me, I just wanted to know kind of
Well,
the,
it'd still be city positions.
what would be the extra.
So the council.
So if they become part of.
I was just trying to
the
determine what
LFRA,
extra heartburn, but it doesn't sound like a lot.
I don't know how that affects.
Their district is still whole, even if they're part of the new authority,
Yeah.
so they can still serve on it.
Just like we did, they would become authority employees.
Well, I'm just saying, we have a Loveland Urban Renewal Authority, and right now the representative of the special district
But they're still
is
special
somebody
districts.
from EMS, even though they represent all of the special districts. I'm just, I don't know if it affects it or not.
I don't think
For you
so.
to think
I
about.
will, I'll consider that. My gut reaction is it probably wouldn't, because they would still retain their district, not like it is right now. We've got the council with a representative
Yeah.
on the authority. You've got the rural district with representative on the authority. So by the special district, or by Thompson Valley joining or being absorbed, they would still have their unique board, and they would, presumably would want some representation on.
Yeah, I
The
don't know
authority.
if it is or not, I just threw it out there.
It's a good
to
question.
look at.
Yeah.
I will tell you, there's a lot to still navigate here. I've had quite a few conversations with Chief Charles. For the past 2 years, with Chief Robinson, we have a meeting set up, the executive staff. We're gonna have a conversation. And my conversation, you tell me if I'm wrong in this approach. We can't accomplish what we want as the LFRA alone. They can't accomplish what they want alone. And if we're sitting here trying to build organizations separately to do the same service, it doesn't really make sense. We're basically putting a lot of taxpayers in a stressful situation where we could really build something collectively together.
Chief, eventually, I think first step, if we do look at this, and I still think we meet as a group and look at the district, walk down the path of the model, but if you bring them on, that's quick, your IGAs, it's not earth shattering, right? There's some work to be done there and everybody's got to sign off. You bring forward, and if there's a slight reduction in their models or whatever, because of the inherent cost savings, efficiency of putting things together. But eventually, if you want to become a district, that may be 2 years out or 3 years out, you still can. It's just going to take all those groups to do it. But you're then not going to be paying 1.75 mils for Thompson. There's going to be a savings inherent that you need to talk about, because you're only going to have 1 mil levy for the district. You're not going to have one for the different services of the district. It's just going to be one. So eventually the 175 going to the authority doesn't go away, but when you move to a greater district, it will go away. And that'll be an inherent savings to the taxpayer. So there's things that, when we approach this and the groups approach this, I think at the end of the day, we need to be prepared to say it's kind of back to baby steps. It's a 3-step process. Step 1, maybe just bring everybody under the roof. This is what it looks like. This is what the percentages are. No longer maybe 20, maybe we're 60 and you're 10 and the other groups are the other 20, right? And so we'll look at that and look what those numbers are. And so it may reduce both of our needs right now because it won't be that dramatic because they're barely surviving as they are, but there will be some inherent saving. And then two, then move to a district once you get everybody under the roof and we figure it out and figure out the numbers and with the mill levies and how that's going to work out. That's phase two. That has to go to a vote of all the different groups. So all four would end up having a vote to be.
But it's an inclusion election. And to your point, the rural, Jeff living in the rural right now pays 11.1 mils plus he pays 1.75 on top of that. So when we went to a district, let's just say we said 11.1, we actually give a savings to them. So I think that passes like that.
I come in and spend all my money.
All right, so we've agreed finance wise that we will set up that meeting. Christie will work on that for us. We'll keep legal apprised. Tom and
I don't know where.
I did this yesterday. Oh, don't, hey, it's me. I get my mind running down two different paths. So Tom and Paul, will have either one of you represented at those as well. And then when we come back to legal, we'll do the same. Same thing with you, Craig and Anthony.
And I said one more quick note for you as well, Chief. The last time we were out, my role was, I was split. I was not only a negotiator, but I was also advising. So I was fulfilling both roles. Now that Jim is firmly here, we've got a more formalized team for this. I'm gonna be backing away from that negotiator role. I'm still ready to play it every now and then, it's just the way it works, and once in a while I need to switch, but the goal is really to provide the advice. Dylan and Dalton are still in the mix. I didn't think they needed to be at this meeting because we're just kind of kicking things off, but we have them at our disposal as well.
Yeah, and I had asked him, he was thinking that they were more distant, that's between the two of you.
Okay, so, oh no,
That's why I didn't extend it out to them. I was.
That's what I told them they didn't need to come to this one, but they have a lot of experience with special districts and as far as our bond counsel goes and our financial advisor generally, I like running questions past them. They've got a lot of good experience, so I want to keep them
Through the district. Paul.
Chief, it might be a little premature, but if the finance group is gonna get together, what kind of product are you looking for in this initial stage? And what I'm getting at is, at what point is it initially with that group, or will it come to the whole group of the overshadowing is always what is most politically palatable? And at what point is that perspective going to be put into whatever comes forward?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it starts with Andrea and I forecasting the needs. So what's the financial need if you go 5-10 years down the road? Okay, so based on the strategic plan, what does that look like? What would it look like with a millage? What would that look like adding in a sales tax? So we have to know what we need to function in the future. Okay, and that could be scalable, could be moldable clay. But for the most part, I mean, we've spelled it out in our strategic plan. Now, coming from the city side, okay, is that a portion of mills? Is that subsidized with sales tax? Is that off the table? Do we need to go a different route? So the first thing starts with us. Here's the number that we think we need. And then you guys kind of incorporate inflation and everything else into that, make sure we're on the mark, and then build the plan around that. So here's option A, transitioning to a fire district. Here's option B with Thompson Valley, MS, Berthoud, and so forth. Does that make sense?
So if we meet as a financial group and start talking about the options and start going down the path that, oh, man, we really like the idea of potentially bringing in these other groups. Do you know, Chief, like how open they would be to providing us with their financials? Because we would need to be able to see where they're at financially.
Yeah. We can't just, I think we spitball literally at first. Once we have that meeting formally with Thompson Valley and get their nod of consideration, then I can ask that question. Craig, would you agree?
They're a special district, their finances are available anytime.
Okay.
But I need to free it up. I've talked to organizational charts, really just instead of us searching and rummaging, getting the details.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Same thing with Berthoud, as soon as they give us that nod, so. All right, Tom.
Just the only thing that's outstanding for me is, which could be a variable, is the city working or anticipating doing something this November that would be a variable? No, okay.
Nothing's been discussed.
Yes.
The school district's gonna go for a bond this November.
They're gonna go again.
Yeah, we're not there this year. I mean, after last year and the year before, it's just, we gotta take our time, we gotta realign ourselves, we gotta kind of as a team come together and refill. I mean, as Molly pointed out, I mean, last year, we're just kind of waiting for that date. There's all that stress on the organization. Each department had different reductions. You know, you may have had 1% to one budget and 43% to the library budget, or, you know, 26 to my office budget. You know, wasn't here during that time, but looking at the numbers, it was very variable across it. That created groundswells. And then you have, when you did make reductions, you have an organization now that the community is pushing on it. We want the same level of service we used to have with the reductions that you made, and that's creating a whole nother layer. And so it's challenging right now.
For
So
sure.
for us,
It just
there's no
makes it
way we can
cleaner
get our
if
act
not.
together to go out, nor are we in a position really to have that. So maybe next year, but we won't if we're looking at a district and we could somehow free up some of that 19 million that we're spending now, or 19.8 million, whatever the number is on the flyer. If we can free up a little bit that it gives us a little bit of cushion to work. So, you know, back to those discussions, that's probably how we'll approach it. And when everybody's meeting is look at that. Now we just can't turn over 19.8 million directly out of, and certainly we don't have enough. Our full mill levy doesn't generate that much.
Yeah.
Generate 16. So,
Exactly.
you know, there has to be some supplemental to that at the end of the day. And it might be the relationships with Berthoud and Thompson Valley EMS that help offset some of that to get to a good landing spot. I don't know yet until we look at everything.
All right, so we're 19 minutes ahead of schedule. See that, Mayor? See that, Jim? See the way that works? All right, so.
Because I won't even, yeah,
I got it.
I know why.
I got it.
I'll
So-
share it later.
So what we'll do is we'll wrap it up. We'll have this first meeting, make sure legal's in tune with where we're going. And we'll set the next one, working with staff. So anything else? Again, I want to reiterate, thanks. We appreciate it. We appreciate the opportunity to kind of reset this and create the direction that we need to do, not only as the LFRA, but as the city as well. So in the rural district. So thank you. All right, there's more coffee back there, Jim. Based on your pace, you probably gotta get a little bit more.
Yeah.
Molly, Matt, thanks.
Thank you, City Hall.
Thanks, guys.
Sorry, I didn't ask. Do you have any questions? Ben?
Flat River Power, that
Cut
was
you off.
9 to 1, and then here, and then I have to be up to Burnett for some